these guys is they're going to do, I think, a quick introduction or about a 10-minute introduction followed by a Q&A. And then they're going to talk for about 30 minutes followed by an extended Q&A. Is that right? Yeah? Okay, great. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Susanna. Hi again, everybody. We were here a while back. I'm sure you've done a lot of interesting things and seen a lot of interesting material since then. So, hello from the park board. We're going to talk to you a bit about the parks considerations having to do with the east-west arterial alignment. Here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about why we're here, and then a little bit about how the parks in the study area are used. Then we're going to take a break and do quick Q&A, and then we're going to come back, talk about the importance of parks in Strathcona, and then a little bit about how difficult it is for us to acquire new parks, and you'll see how that's related. Then Leila's going to talk in a little more detail about the impacts and potential mitigations, the impacts of the options and the potential mitigations. And then we're going to end with a little bit of discussion about how changes to parks would happen in terms of jurisdiction and process. So why are we here today? Well, we are here, as you know, because we're talking about these four main arterial options, and the fact that there are parks affected by all of them in to a lesser or greater degree. So just to recap again, do I have a point here? Okay. So there are three parks that are affected. One is obviously Strathcona Park, which is a 10-hectare park. The second is Trillium Park, which is roughly a little under half the size of 3 hectares. The third park it's not directly affected by any of the alignments, but in terms of connectivity of the parks, Strathcona Linear Park forms a part with these parks of a greater linear park connected system and Upton Plain as well. So I want to talk a little bit about how the parks are used currently. So I'll just review what the existing features of the parks are. And so on the top is a picture of Strathcona Park. For those of you who haven't been out to the office, you've all been out there and walked around. But, so this won't be new information for you. There's a whole host of things that happen in Strathcona Park. We have 3 ball diamonds. We have the field house, which includes washrooms and is currently being used by an Indigenous group doing an activation in the field house on Indigenous food systems. We have a track and informal field that's within the track. There is wildlife habitat and ecological value landscape through here, including the raptor nest, the bald eagle nests. The Cottonwood Community Garden sits here and kind of straddles the boundary between the park and the road right away from Malton. We have 2 off-leash dog areas, skate park and basketball courts in the middle of the park. There's a variety of places where we have open green space, a playground, we have a picnic shelter and a climbing feature here, tennis courts also in this middle court, and then over on the west part of the park on the other side of the Hawks Avenue is the Strathcona Community Garden and Oak Orchard. And we move to Trillium Park. This is at a little larger scale. You'll notice that actually Trillium's quite a bit smaller than Strathcona, but this picture's a little bit larger scale. The main feature of Trillium is, of course, the synthetic field surfaces. There's 2 of them. Those are heavily programmed and booked for soccer. They're also used for field hockey and ultimate. We have a playground up at the north end of the park. We've got field house, washroom and change room facility, a picnic shelter here. There's an environmental art and community learning garden area. We also have some naturalized areas in the north side of the park. There's a walking loop that you can walk around. And lastly, there's an amphitheater over at the northwest side of the park. So lots going on in each of the parks. Quite different things, but both quite active parks. So here are some numbers that I'm going to try to explain to you. I'm going to stand down here just so I'm not in anybody's way, if that's all right. So we have some data here, mostly from our our booking system. So anyone who wants to book any facility, parks or rec in the park board system, needs to go through our booking system, and we keep quite detailed data. So these are the numbers for Strathcona Park for 2017, so sort of an average year. And we had just under 150,000 people in that year booked to use Strathcona Park. So that means anyone that was there doing an activity for a booking, like playing soccer or having a picnic or a festival, would be counted in these numbers. And then Arterial, smaller but still significant, just under 28,000 people recorded through our booking system. Neither of those numbers includes casual use, use that isn't tracked through our booking system. So those numbers would be higher if you were to factor in the people that go there every day to walk their dogs, walk through the park, use the informal field inside the track, what have you. This number, actually I'll go down to this number. This number is on average over the last 3 years, 2016 through 2018, the number of permits that were granted in both parks. So there's 20 permits per year on average. Many of those permits are for multiple events. So we have just under 60 groups over the last 3 years that have booked space in one or the other of the parks. So many of these, such as youth soccer organization, will have a permit for multiple events in Trillium and in Strathcona. This last number here is basically on any given day. We have measured in quite a lot of detail the topography and the urban fabric of the city, and also census and population and density data, and we calculated that we have, on any given day, about 29,000 people within an 8-minute walk of the two parks. So that is a total of the people who live in the area and also the people during the daytime who work in the area. So this is a graph that shows all our parks. We have about 230 parks. And we've included this because we want to make the point that we actually don't have a lot of large parks in our system. Almost all of our parks are large, quite a bit over half our parks are under 2.5 hectares, or about 10 acres large. So Strathcona clocks in at the 14th largest park, and then Trillium would be here just above Columbia. Why is that important? And the other thing too is that Stanley Park isn't shown on this graph because it's much larger. It would extend up to the rafters of the ceiling. So yeah, only 14 of over 230 parks in our system are over 10 hectares, or about 6% of our parks by numbers. Why is that important? This is a picture of the Walk for Reconciliation and Expo in Strathcona Park a couple of years ago. That idea of not having a whole lot of large parks is important because large parks give the park board the flexibility to do a lot of things. One is to run really large events like this, and there's a few events that happen in Strathcona that use the large main area of Strathcona. It also allows us, the park board has a mandate to provide park and recreation services to the population of the city of Vancouver in perpetuity for the long haul. And we do needs assessments in neighborhoods and citywide to figure out what people need in terms of park and recreation amenities and services, and those are always changing. The population's growing, the demographics are changing, and that continues to happen. So our needs change, and to be honest, we don't even know what we're going to need to provide as a park board 50, 75 years from now. What large parks do for us is they allow us the flexibility to have large, contiguous, sort of regularly shaped spaces to ensure that we're going to be able to provide services for Vancouverites, no matter what those services might be. Just to talk a little bit about this, I don't know how many of you are familiar with VanPlay. It is our ongoing park and recreation services master plan. It's a citywide plan that we're hoping to wrap later this year. take to our board for approval. It basically talks about it provides a vision, a 25-year vision and beyond for Parks and Rec services. And the park classification that's emerging from Van Play basically categorizes our park from small, local and urban plaza. And the example of a local park would be McLean Park or Woodland Park right here, the parks that are under 2.5 hectares, all the way up to destination parks, Stanley Park, Queen Elizabeth Park, which are clearly for regional use and tourism use. Both of these parks, Strathcona and Trillium, fall in the community park category at under 20 hectares. And so both of those parks serve both their local community and neighborhood and also citywide residents. And I will leave it there and we'll stop for Q&A and then continue.